Of course, it's more like a metaphor because the Emperor Diocletian was very much disappointed. This was his, I would say, baby. That was his whole life project, and he saw it ruined in front of his eyes during his lifetime. In this Game of Thrones, civil wars, even his only wife and daughter, they were assassinated. So actually he died in this palace as an old man, very disappointed man at the end, seeing the whole picture and the whole project going. So actually we will today go to this beautiful UNESCO site. Why is it UNESCO site? It's not only because it's Roman, it's not only because it's old, but it's also because of the fact that people are living inside of the UNESCO site for more than 1,700 years. This is unique example. So this is no museum. You don't have to pay a ticket when you're going inside. You're just walking through, and of course they are all privately owned houses and apartments inside of this palace. And now, of course, from the era of Booking.com and Airbnb, people are renting out their apartments and they're earning a very decent money. So it's very popular to come and spend the night in what was once the private apartment, the private imperial villa of the most powerful man alive. It took 10 years to build this place, right? They were bringing the material from the island of Raj that you're going to visit tomorrow. So the quarries are still over there. The highest quality of the limestone they brought here, and they were building the place for 10 years. A couple of thousands of people participated at least, okay? 180 meters, 250 meters, 250 meters. This is the south, this is this part, okay? This is the north part. This is the eastern, and this is the western side. 16 towers surrounding the place, right? 3 main entrances from the land, and only one from the south, which was actually the escape route. 3 main sections. The northern part that was used only by the servants and the military. This is the middle section dedicated to the gods. The Temple of Jupiter, which is now the oldest cathedral in the world, some other temples in this side, and the imperial flag that was here in this south section. The sea was once upon a time all the way to the palace, right? But now you can see what is here. So when we go on the first floor, we'll try to imagine that nothing was here before. What happened? When the capital of the whole province of Dalmatia, that's called Salona, when it was destroyed in the 7th century, the people from over there, actually they were refugees. So they ran to this palace and they ran to the islands. When the barbarians went, then they returned from the islands and they settled in the palace. The emperor was gone, so they claimed the palace for themselves, and they made their living here. So they started to rebuild the place, they started to build their own houses here, and of course, every house needs a toilet, right? And there were a lot of people living above our heads, so there were many toilets as well. So the holes, you can guess what that was, right? Okay, so don't be alarmed now, they're not using them as toilets anymore. But they have been doing it for centuries. So they actually fill the whole area with you know what, right? Over the time, throughout the centuries, the whole content of this vast space was petrified, turned into a stone, which actually helped to preserve the whole thing around us in the original shape. It actually made the conservation of the whole area. And this is, even today, the most preserved part of the Diocletian's palace. Most preserved and most original. Everything above our heads, it was ruined, rebuilt, detached, recycled, you will see. So everything what you will see above our heads is not even close to what it was 1,700 years ago. Okay? And of course you can see all these building materials which we used, so the big limestone blocks, They call this technique opus quadratum because they use no cement. You see, there's no cement in between the blocks, and you cannot even put the credit card in between. It was carved so precisely that they were just putting one block on top of another. Right? Then you have some other stone. You have the bricks. You have a mortar over there. Then you have a travertine over here. You see the arches. Now you can see how they were building the arches. They copied a lot of things from the ancient Greeks, but they were using some other elements that Greeks were not using, and that was the arch. Of course, the arch, as a building element, it can take much more weight than just the flat. Right? He proclaimed himself as a living god, like a son of the Jupiter called Domnius. Right? This is how he called himself. And when he died, he was buried here in a big sarcophagus. And after the Christians, became stronger and stronger and more influential, when the Salona was destroyed, when they came here in the 7th century, then they demolished his sarcophagus. They probably throw his bones to the sea, and then they made this a place for the bones, for the remains of the two saints, local saints. This is the St. Domnius. Now it's called the St. Domnius Cathedral. Although it's actually dedicated to the Virgin Mary. The St. Domnius Tower was built next to it, but everybody in Split will just tell you St. Domnius Cathedral. Okay? And St. Anastasia was also buried here next to him. Those two saints were allegedly assassinated during the reign of Emperor Diocletian in these purges that Diocletian did. However, the tower was, of course, not built right away when this octagonal temple. It was built much later in the 13th century, and it was rebuilt actually in the 20th century. It was renovated. So now it's 4 meters higher. Now it has 57 meters. Originally it had 55. Yeah. It's really beautiful, Romanesque style, and you can even go inside and you can climb all the way to the top of it, if you have the will and energy. Because we're still doing the masses inside, the services, right, the regular, and the weddings, especially on the weekdays. So it's very often that during the tours we are experiencing the weddings, which is actually very, very nice. Because throughout the centuries it was ruined, it was even bombed in the Second World War. So you can see this gap here, close to the south wall. You see the building here. So there were buildings all along the south wall to the other building. Now they're gone, because during the Second World War, there was some bombing here, private chambers of the Emperor Diocletian. So only he and his family were allowed to come here, and of course anybody else who Emperor would invite. At the beginning of the 4th century, right? So what about the symbol? Was Hitler a time traveler? No, obviously not, right? So the symbol is much, much older than 20th century. Allegedly it goes all the way to India, all the way like at least 3,000 years old. And it was a symbol for everything good and everything positive. But in 20th century they turned it upside down. So Klapa is actually, it's a man's band, so at least 3 singers without any instruments, performing multi-scale a cappella singing. It goes centuries and centuries back, and it's a very important part of Croatian heritage and tradition. It's so nice when they're performing their songs. You can almost like hear the instruments because they're so nicely tuned, and their performance is gorgeous. Usually they perform here, so the acoustic of this place is really amazing, and people come and they listen. It's free. First of all, this is the most central part of the palace. As I said, this will be the place where all the subjects gathered and came to greet the emperor, who would come from his apartment, from this little balcony, and he would then speak to the audience. Of course, what is the most unusual thing that you would never expect to see in Croatia, right? It's not hard to guess, right? The big granite Sphinx. It's definitely not carved here in Croatia. It was made in Egypt. of course. And since Diocletian was also the Egyptian pharaoh, because Egypt was part of the Roman Empire, when it was a big riot in Egypt because they were not happy with certain things. So of course the emperor had to go there with his legions to combat the Croatia rebellion. And after the visit, actually when the bloodshed was done, he did some exploration and I guess some sightseeing of his own, I guess, and he was very much amazed about everything he experienced and saw over there, with all the monuments, Sphinx, pyramids, all the riches and treasures, and he brought some of them back to his place, to his retirement home. So 12 Sphinx were brought here. This one, the archaeologists and historians, they agree it was from the time of the Tutmosis III. So that's approximately 3,500 years old. The building material is a black granite, and you see the crack in the middle section of the back. Allegedly, it happened when they were reconstructing the tower. One piece of the stone fell directly on the Sphinx. Lucky for us, it didn't crush it in million pieces, but it only cracked in half. There were 12 of them altogether, and they're all around the place. The old Christians didn't like those pagan symbols. They were actually superstitious, and they were very much afraid to look directly in the Sphinx's eyes, right? So they actually removed all the heads from the Sphinx all around except this one. This one is still standing in its original shape, and it's really unique for some other reason. You can see the hands. They are not line paws, right? They are the hand of the human, right? And this sacrificial cup, so it's obviously it was serving in some kind of a ceremonies of sacrificing and giving the offerings to the gods. That was actually a most common thing in the Egypt and in the Roman Empire as well. So again, the symbolism of number 4, some more things brought from Egypt. You see these red columns, 4 of them on this side, 4 of them on this side, and 4 of them built in these palaces here. These palaces, don't forget, they were not here 1,700 years ago. There were 2 small temples here a long time ago, but now you can see medieval palaces of the most influential and richest families of the medieval split. This stone is called Porphyrium. It's a special red marble that you can find only in one place in the world, in Egypt, near the Aswan Dam. So you can imagine the logistic that was necessary to bring those big columns all the way from the area of the Aswan Dam to the Egypt and then transported with the boats all the way to here. You can imagine. Now we are on the People's Square, the main square of Split, medieval square. Actually, this was the first part of Split, where Split as a medieval town started to spread once it exited from the Diocletian Palace. And here you can see the oldest city hall over there, built from the 14th century onwards. So the floors have been building, all the way until the 19th century. So you have like this Venetian Gothic style of the windows that is really recognizable and popular all around the Croatia. Why? They also call it the Venetian Gothic style because the Venice was ruling not only the area of Split, but the whole Dalmatian coast. They were ruling this town, and they did something here to the Jewish community that is still living here in this section of the old town, from the 16th century, by the way. And it says, I will translate directly from the Croatian, it says, in the middle of the prayer on the Shabbat, on the 12th of June, 1942, the group of fascists devastated the synagogue and the Jewish community and the nearby Jewish shops. Everything they robbed, they brought here to this place and they burned it here together with the books and all kinds of things that were imported for the Jewish heritage. And here on the other side it says, let this not be forgotten or ever repeated again. The city of Split, 12th of June 2018. So I would say on this side, they acknowledge it happened here on this place. We're definitely not proud of that. Croatians had nothing to do with it, but it happened. And on the other side, after so many years, they said, okay, let's still remember and let's speak about this sad event, so we would keep the memory alive, because this is the only way to prevent those things of happening again. One of the towers still standing on the original place, in the original shape, more or less, of course, and only 3 of the original 16, right? So the whole palace had 16 towers. Also, the orientation of the north was towards the most important man here, to whom Ivan Meštrović, the most famous sculptor that ever lived in Croatia, he created 3 of those. This is the biggest one. It was given, or it was built for the city of Split. So, as you can see, some kind of a lines, right? You can see it. This big statue back in, I think it was 1928, so it was before the Second World War. It was originally placed on the Peristyle, in the middle section of the palace, right? But what happened? When the Italians came here at the beginning of the First World War, they were afraid they're going to ruin this monument. Why? I will explain soon. So they cut it in 6 pieces and they hid it around the town. They dig the big holes, they put it in the ground, they covered it, and they did reassembling after the Italians and the Germans defeat. Here, he's holding his finger like this, you know, and his book like this. He has this kind of posture. In the original, when it was placed over there, he was like showing this threatening finger toward the Italy. Why? It's always a symbolism, certain symbolism hidden behind, and there is some hidden messages, you know, inside of the churches, buildings, monuments, and stuff like that. This guy, the Bishop of Nîmes, or the Gregory of Nîmes, he lived in the 10th century. So he's not Gandalf, he's not Merlin, he's not Dumbledore. You know, people get confused when they come here. They think he was some of these guys, but no. He was the Croatian bishop, and he was a very close associate of the first Croatian king, Domnius, who ruled from 925 until 928. And they had a big assembly here in Split when they needed to decide who is going to be the archbishop of the whole Croatian kingdom. He was one of the candidates. There were 3 candidates. At the end, the candidate of the city of Split won, and soon he disappeared from the history. Some even say he was poisoned. Why he was so significant? In the medieval age, at 10th century when he lived, Latin was official language of the church. But not too many people spoke Latin. Only some priests spoke Latin. Many of the priests didn't speak Latin, and of course, normal people didn't speak any Latin. So they were performing the ceremonies and the masses inside of each and every church, or at least many of them, in Croatian language. They were not using Latin. So the Pope in Rome was not too happy about it, right? He was insisting that we should be using Latin in all the churches. But for the practical reasons, because a lot of priests just couldn't speak Latin, they didn't know. And of course, the people were also happy when you were speaking the Croatian churches, because they could understand what was all about, right? Because later, when the Latin became really official language, people couldn't understand anything, right? So they couldn't read the Bible, they couldn't understand the priest. So how did they knew? Frescoes and paintings around the church, inside the church, were actually those who were transmitting the most important message about the most important parts of the story about the Jesus Christ. This was actually the only way how the people could learn about their religion, right? So he was the one who tried to actually prevent of Latin coming inside of the Croatian churches. That's why he was considered kind of a symbol of resistance toward the Latin or later Italian influence. Especially since Venice was ruling this area for 400 years, and the people were not happy about it, but it was a fact. When they managed to get rid of the Venetians, the French came, after them the Austrians, and after that the Yugoslavia, the first, the second Yugoslavia, and from the 1991 we have the independent Croatian state. And he was always considered to be like a symbol of the Croatian resistance toward the Italian. That's why they cut it in pieces, they hid it away, because the fascists would probably destroy it, because they also knew it. And now we can admire to this statue. You can go and rub his toe, because you can see it has a golden toe, because people, they kind of think if they do it, maybe they could get their wish come true. So try to do it by the end of the cruise. If it's not happening, tell me, okay?